Hey guys, this is Tom Paul Tipton, your host for the Exchange Podcast. We're coming to you from Living Water Church in Conway, Arkansas. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode and say thank you to those who support this podcast with your contributions. Please like and share us on Facebook and get the word out, and like, subscribe, and share us on YouTube. Send any questions you have and join in on the exchange. Wow, so something that I never thought in my lifetime is happened yesterday. Historical landmark decision.
Huge.
And I've already had some conversations with some people that are glad it happened, but they've also got their concerns. They've expressed their concerns that this is going to have some kind of negative effect on the midterms as far as conservatism. But according to USA Today, 59% to 29% say that it's going to be the economy, and 7 out of 10 voters say that they don't. What Roe v. Wade, or the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, will have nothing to do when they enter that ballot box. I'm going to start off by saying that this is a decision that I did not think would come around in my lifetime. I was actually having a discussion with someone a little bit earlier today, or I made a mention, and they even said they remembered me saying, I've been saying for a while that I believe an awakening is coming to this country, and I really believe that this is one of the first steps in that happening. And I think that most people are looking up, and they're realizing that we are in a lot of trouble, and they know that something's got to reverse course. And I don't really know what caused this to happen, other than I know that I'm glad it's happened. Anyway, I'm going to say we are glad to be back. We took a week off. Jay had a wedding he had to go to, and I had a funeral I had to go to, and it was all on the same day in 2 different states, several miles apart. But it is good to be back, and welcome back, Jay.
Yeah, it's really good to be back. Again, Michael, Monique, congratulations on the wedding, and my condolences for the loss for you, Thomas.
Thank you.
But something that I want to just get out of the way before we jump into this monumental conversation, which is, it is a special month this month. I think all of you may know what it is, and I'm talking about Men's Mental Health Month, and that's what this month of June has been for a while. And I just want to say, it's not bad to talk about things, men. It's not bad to find somebody you trust and to talk about things, seek professional help, and taking care of yourself is also taking care of your mind. God gave us one mind, and he wants us to take care of our body just as much as the physical as the mental. So that's my 2 cents on that. I'm really happy about what we're going to talk about today. Especially with some of the repercussions that have shown out. But I want to give a pat on the back to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
There were death threats. Mm-hmm. There were people out there doing crazy things, trying to get them to back down, but they stood by their convictions.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the big things that nobody's talking about. Everybody wants to talk about, well, they said under oath that they weren't planning on, you're right. They said that they weren't planning on it, but something had changed. And then even in the face of pain and destruction and even death, they looked that in the eye and said, nope, conviction is a conviction. You got to stick with it. Got to see it through to the end. And so I think that should be talked about as well. We talked about it, a couple weeks ago when that guy showed up at Kavanaugh's house.
Yeah, we did. And I kind of think I thought then that could have been one of the major things that would galvanize and cause them to come together. Now, one of the things I'm not too happy about, look, I'm happy for the win, but what would have been much better, and to clear up, some people are hearing that it was a 6-3 decision. That's partly true and it's partly not true. The 6-3 decision was for the Casey versus Mississippi case, and that is that once a woman reaches 15 weeks, she cannot have an abortion. So he stood on that, but he descended on the Roe v. Wade. He he voted the other way.
You talking about Kavanaugh?
No, Roberts.
Gotcha.
And he voted to not overturn Roe v. Wade, which, thank God, we still got the overturn of Roe v. Wade, because personally, I believe that is a major step. And I've quoted this scripture on here before, and I think a lot of us know it. It just simply says, if my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and repent. And what this has done is this has really put some legs to a prayer. We have prayed about this. We have voted about this. We have called senators. I mean, I would say lobby, but we don't have lobbyists. But we have done everything we can within our human power, as far as aside from prayer. But most important, we've prayed about it, and we've got an answer to it. Mm-hmm. And so I see some correction and direction going on here.
Yeah.
But I will say this, that we as Christians are going to have to stay vigilant. We're going to have to stay consistent, and we cannot give up. This is not over. This was a victory, but this is not over. One of the things that I think happened when Trump won in 2016 is many Christians just kind of sat back and was like, "Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
Hey, this is." And Trump said something yesterday that, man, I was like, "Wow, this guy." Say what you want to about him, but this was incredibly wise of him to say this. He was being interviewed, and somebody said, or they didn't call him Mr. President, but they said, you can take a victory lap. And he said, all the victory belongs to God. That was an incredibly wise statement, because he was wise enough to give God the glory for that. And so anyway, according to ABC News, the Department of Homeland Security expects violence could occur for weeks from domestic violent extremists following the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade, according to a bulletin obtained first by ABC News. Now,
you don't say.
I think most people were expecting this, and
Thomas, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, but my side note, my dad took us to the Nevada part of Lake Tahoe, in California, and he gave all of his boys, hey, here's $50, go crazy. I put it on 30-1 because I'm not a betting man. I don't know what I'm doing, and I accidentally won. That's what gambling is. I don't subscribe to it. I don't think people should do it. It's fun, but if you want to waste your money, you might as well just give me $1,000, and I'll hold on to it for a week, and then when you come back, I'll give you your $1,000 back. And hey, look, that's it. But besides that, if I was a gambling man and I really wanted to bet my money on things, I would have put every single cent I have in my savings that there was going to be violence.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I want to point out to you about ABC News, they kind of put this little sleight of hand in there. One of the things that they go on to say is they say, we expect violence could occur for weeks following the release, particularly as DVEs may be mobilized to respond to changes in state laws and ballot measures on abortion stemming from decision. The bulletin dated June 24th said, we base this assessment on an observed increase in violent incidents across the United States following the unauthorized disclosure in May of a draft majority opinion on the case, the bulletin said. And of course, then after that, it was it Jane's, whatever they're called.
It's Jane's Revenge. Right?
Jane's Revenge. I wanted to call
that.
them Jane's Addiction. Those guys, their music's horrible, but they don't need to go to jail. But Jane's Revenge were taking credit for burning down pro-life centers and different things like that. And it goes on, it says, according to DHS, domestic violent extremists are racially motivated with perceived grievances. Boom! They drop that in, and if you're not careful and you're not looking at what they're saying there, they've got you. Because what they're trying to say now is that the protests against this thing with Roe v. Wade, the violence is coming from racists.
That's what it is. It's a racially motivated thing. That's exactly. No, I'll tell you what's racist. Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Margaret Sanger, man, she's the one who the Nazis took the whole idea from.
The fact that they can only point back to racists just takes the sales out of what a racist actually is in terms of the threat. The threat, you cry wolf enough times. I mean, guys, did we not listen to the same kid story growing up? When you cry wolf enough times, people just are going to say, I don't care. And then an actual racist is going to come in and, eat all the sheep up. And it just blows my mind that they would want to talk about that. But I mean, this is why people talk about a peaceful divorce in this country, is because when one side, quote unquote, loses,
Yep.
they can't just take it, they can't just take it with humility.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as humility on one side or the other.
Right.
And I'm talking about both sides. There are times where both sides just act a fool. For instance, I got this from Timcats, but Democrats call Supreme Court illegitimate and urge resistance following abortion decisions. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty insurrection-y to me, calling for violence. And even though they may not say violence, but come on, they're kind of third party saying, hey, somebody should do this.
Well, there were many of the Democrats who were out calling for violence after this decision, and you know what? That's not shocking because it was the Democrats who owned the slaves. It was the Democrats who had the KKK. It was the Democrats, by the way, who also had the American Nazi Party in the United States. There's a common thread there, and this I'm not running up the flagpole and waving a Republican flag here. What I'm simply trying to say is what they're doing here is Sotomayor is here quoted talking about how that there's going to be expected violence because of it, but yet when she does it, she slants it in such a way. Now, she's not the one who wrote this article. They're quoting something she said. And what she does is she slants it to where that none of the protests could even possibly be violent until the right-wing extremists start getting involved. Now, this is the reason why that January 6th was so horrible. Was because they used that one incident. Okay, we've discussed about the whole summer of love, and there's many people who are predicting another summer of love.
Woo!
But they used that whole summer for 90 days. People watched things getting destroyed. So then on January 6th, a bunch of knuckleheads decide they're going to storm the Capitol. And here we are now 2 years after the fact, and there's still some people that are imprisoned without any kind of representation. Let me ask this. What happened on January 6th was bad. But what about the whole year? And I'm sure you remember a whole year on Facebook and all kinds of social media. People were talking about storming Area is that 51?
Yeah.
Remember that? That was going to be a violent storm. It didn't happen. Okay,
it did turn into a joke.
It did turn into a joke.
We have to.
And I think it was a joke to begin with. But what I'm trying to say is, there were people who took it serious.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there on Facebook going, this would be stupid because they can shoot you on the spot.
Yeah.
And they can arrest you and put you in prison without a trial. We've just gotten into a thing in this country where it's like, if it doesn't go our way, then violence is the answer. Well, all the Supreme Court did with this is said, hey, this is a states' right issue. I'm all for taking as much out of the federal government level as we possibly can.
I mean, a good example of how this translates into what the upbringing of this generation has been is, well, our 2 and 3 year old nieces were arguing over a scooter just now before we came into the studio to talk. And I looked at both of them and I said, what are you guys doing? And niece A said, "Oh well, it's my scooter, and she already had a turn on it, so I'm gonna play with it." And niece B said, "Well, when do I get a turn?" I'm sitting there thinking, "Well, you had a turn, so you got to wait your turn now." And that's all this is that look, quote unquote, there was a victory had for the conservatives. I think it's a victory, and I know for some people they feel like it was a loss. That's the thing: you win some, you lose some. Okay, listen, Tom Brady lost some games.
Right.
All the greats lose, okay, and all the greats win.
Yeah.
But the difference between a great moment in history, a great group of people, is that even in their losses, they can take it on the chin and say, all right, let's get back to the drawing board. Let's figure something out.
Right.
What you don't do, Thomas, is you don't protest and attempt to breach the Arizona Capitol building and force the Senate into a recess.
Yeah.
That took place. This is from Timcast, again, timcast.com. Department of Public Safety officers shot tear gas out of the windows of Arizona Capitol building on Friday evening after it was surrounded by thousands of pro-abortion protesters.
That sounds friendly.
Guys, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
That sounds way familiar. And we're not going to talk about 6/25 like January 6th, I believe, because that's not going to fit the narrative. And that's
Right.
not fair.
Right.
And I don't usually complain about things not being fair, but here's the thing. If you want me to be sympathetic to January 6th, then I'm going to need you to be sympathetic to a group of pro-abortion protesters in Arizona, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of other places, storming certain buildings of that are connected to the government, whether it's state or federal.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I've said it here before, and this is a perfectly good example of what I mean when I say we're in a cold civil war. You mentioned win some and lose some. In every war, regardless of hot or cold, there's battles won and there are battles lost.
Yeah.
And that's why that I say we as Christians and the church, we have to stay vigilant. We have to we have to make certain that because the Bible says that our weapons are not made of our weapons are not carnal, but they are mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean that we as Christians should just sit back and let them beat us down into a corner? No. There's plenty of times when you can go through history and find out when Christians have stood up and we've defended ourselves in a physical manner. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with this. The difference is right now we're not being threatened. Could these threats of violence turn real? Absolutely, and I pray that they don't. But what we have to do is we have to make certain that we stay vigilant. Like one of the things that just passed was this gun control thing, where there were 14 Republicans who signed on to this. So that's a situation where at the end of the day, that's a battle lost right there. Yep. Because now, again, this is something else that I predict will probably show up in the Supreme Court by next year. Because I think when you look at it and they start to view this is going to infringe on gun rights. Yep. And I get it. I've had people tell me, well, yeah, but the red flag laws are only going to actually affect the blue states. Listen, the federal government is involved in this now. It's the same thing when Governor Northam said that, he described taking a baby out of the womb. I told someone this yesterday, because they were all concerned about women not being able to have an abortion if it was at the process of saving the woman's life. I said, look, there might be a state or two, maybe three, but I seriously doubt that many. What I think is going to happen is every state is going to permit for abortion in the case of saving the mother's life. Yeah. And here's what I think really got the ball rolling. This is what I really believe got the ball rolling, is when Governor Northam, the former governor, was describing taking a baby and setting that baby aside and making it comfortable until a decision was made on whether or not to kill it or spare it. Yeah. And I think what happened there was I think a lot of people went, wait a minute. I'm not 100% against abortion. That's not abortion. And if Virginia's allowed to do that, then every state in the union will at some point start doing that.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with my cousin last night. It was over Dungeons and Dragons, and we were talking about that certain people, not everything is for everyone. And I got to the point where I started saying, listen, there are certain people in this world who just shouldn't be able to do certain things because they just aren't mentally ready to do it. For instance, the people who are truly, truly freaking out over not being able to have an abortion, they shouldn't be parents. But then again, we should also be teaching everybody from a young age abstinence. A lot of people are going to say, oh, well, did you practice that when you were growing up? No, I didn't. I was foolish. I had my time. But let me tell you something. When a woman is deciding to murder her baby or not, that is not the most intimate time in a woman's life. President Obama, he said that's something he said on a tweet. It's when you're choosing a mate. It's when you're choosing somebody to lay with. The consequence of that is, hey, I'm probably going to get pregnant from this. And if you abstain from it, if you don't do it, guess what? No baby. Zero chance of having a kid when you abstain from sex. That's probably a surprise for most of you. So these people who are truly screaming and freaking out over it, look, hookup culture has screwed this country time and time again.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, if sin wasn't fun, then there'd be no need for Jesus, because then we wouldn't be doing it.
Well, the Bible says that. It says sin is pleasurable for a season.
Exactly. And so all I'm saying is that the reality is that this revival, this awakening that Thomas has been talking about, there are a lot of people waking up to the realities of, I don't need this provocative lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was telling Thomas, like, I get on TikTok. I like watching the I go to the gym, so I like watching the bodybuilding. Gym talk is what they call it. And you'll see on there, Thomas, I know you don't have it, but you'll see on there's a lot of videos of the guys who are going to the gym, and they're like, all right, guys, here's what I'm challenging you guys. And they have like 10, 15, 30,000 followers, and they're each saying, listen, all right, guys, I'm going to challenge you to this. No sex, only cold showers, go to the gym 4 times a week, and eat nothing but rice and chicken for the next month or something like that. And it's like, wow, these guys are promoting what is not usually promoted in like the mainstream. For instance, they talk about mental health, and a lot of the times that mental health is praised, like the absence of mental health, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, I have this, I have that, I have this. It's like you need help. But a lot of people would say, oh, no, they're strong because they're coming out with it and they're just living with it. It's like, oh, no, I think they should take care of that. And there are these people on TikTok who are like, look, we're trying to better ourselves as men, be stronger men, be, you know, read more. Some of them, a lot of the people on the gym side of TikTok are like, hey, read your Bible. There's a lot of good Proverbs, a lot of good things in the Old Testament of these great men who are doing great things. I don't know if they're Christian or anything, but there is kind of this awakening of, look what the Word has to offer compared to the world. Look what God has to offer compared to the world. And you see it, hard work, dedication, taking care of your body, making sure that you are at tip-top shape so that you can take care of things, not sleeping around, not doing drugs, not drinking, all that type of stuff, because it leads to ruin. And look, I've had this conversation with my wife, and it's like, there is no way I'm advocating for abortion one bit. I would think about it if her life is on the line. I'll think about it if, for some reason, I have a daughter and she gets pregnant and her life is on the line. But I told her we made the decision, and we don't have kids yet, but we made the decision that if our kids decide to do something like that, we will advocate for them to take care of their kid, to do what they need to do, because that is what God told us to do, is to be fruitful and multiply within the confines of marriage. But if it happens outside of marriage, we still need to take care of that younger generation, not put them in the trash, so to speak.
Yeah. Right.
So that's just my 2 cents on that, is that overall it's a morality thing, and a lot of people are waking up to a new morality of goodness and purity.
So it just came across my phone too. What's going on in Arizona?
There you go.
Where you at, Maxine Waters? Where you at, Nancy Pelosi? Where you at, Chuck Schumer? Where are you guys at that are having these January 6th listenings? They're holding lawmakers hostage, and Jay just talked about it, quoting it from Tim Pool, and I just got it myself. They're actually doing more than the January 6th protesters. No one from January 6th, there was not one congressman, not one senator, not one lawmaker that was held hostage on January 6th.
Nope.
But the people who went into the Capitol are being held hostage without representation. So I'm just kind of curious if any of this is going to be, if anyone's going to be arrested. And if so, how long are they going to be held?
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be held for a little while. I'm sure that because they're going to have to do something to bring some of this down. But see, this is the problem. This is what happens because it's every bit of this is a one-sided issue. Listen, Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said that it was a weak interpretation that they used on civil rights in order to try and give abortion at a federal level. And so what happens? Well, supposedly the whole January 6th thing was over the fact that conservatives couldn't accept the outcome of an election. Donald Trump couldn't accept the outcome of an election. This is people that can't accept the outcome of something that even one of their very own. So that should tell you something.
Yeah.
One of their very own disagreed with what or agreed with what the conservatives believed. This should tell you this has nothing to do with the American people. Just like I read earlier, just as we were starting, the average American is not going to concern about Roe v. Wade being kicked back to the state level.
Yep.
Why? Because food prices are too high, and they got to worry about trying to put food, gas in the tank and food on the table.
Yep.
That is the key thing right there. Roe v. Wade is the last problem. Listen. We're hearing a whole lot of people talk about, well, I hope the church is ready to adopt all these children. Well, guess what? This is my recommendation. Let's not worry about adoption right now. Let's let the church, maybe, I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be saying this, but I'm going to say it. Let the church start teaching some classes on how babies are made. Because if you don't know how babies are made, you need to find out. Because that's one of the reasons why apparently abortion is so high. Abortion isn't because of rape, murder, or incest, or saving the mother's life. Very rarely are those the cases. The real cases is because somebody got pregnant and it was inconvenient. You don't get to murder a child because it's inconvenient.
Exactly.
It's not the way this works. And so now what we're seeing is a bunch of people act like children, storm a Capitol in another state. Okay, fine, it wasn't at the national level, but it's still at a state level, which by the way, is a whole lot more, I don't want to say important, it's a whole lot more personal once it's stormed at the state level.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
I mean, so because what they're going to do now is they're going to go and try to attack everything at a local level, because if they can start to try to take things over at a local level, then they will come in and try to transform everything at the federal level.
I would almost say that whoever said that, hey, churches, are you ready to adopt all these children? I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it 100% with conviction. Sure. Yeah, we are. That's our job.
Yeah.
That is what we're supposed to do. And here's the thing. Anybody who goes to a church that's not ours here in Living Water Church Conway, you tell your pastor that too, that we are ready, because that's what we're called to do. This is a challenge to the Christians who are listening. If you're not ready for that, then what are you doing in a congregation? Yeah. All right? I get the privilege to help with outreach here, and we're getting ready for a barbecue coming up. And I'm going to be inviting every single man, woman, and child on our street, because that's our job. Mm-hmm. Our church is not here by accident. Mm-hmm. Our church is not here on a whim. Our church is here because God placed us here. And anybody who is hungry, who doesn't have any clothes, anybody who has a child in need of anything, you bring them to us. Yeah. And if we're not here, I'm going to say this for the whole church, go to the parsonage, ask for whoever's in charge over there, and then we will get stuff. We will take care of business. Yeah. That's our job. Yeah. So don't sit here and act like that's a scary thing for us. Oh, we hope you're ready for these orphans. Look, my mother was adopted. I have my father, who isn't my birth father. I know a thing or two from my family's upbringing about taking care of the people who need it the most. And it is the children, and it is the widows. So you know what? Get that out of here. That's a load of garbage. Yep. And for you to think that that's a threat, I take it as a challenge and a compliment. I'm so ready for that. Right.
Well, and, the scripture tells us that true religion undefiled is this, to take care of the widows and orphans. Mm-hmm. Okay, look, somebody who's an orphan, that's been thrown upon them. A widow is, that's a life occurrence. I know we can make the argument, well, yeah, but what about the children who's born? Yes, I agree with that. And the church should be more responsible for that. But at the same time, people need to start learning that having a baby, it's mostly adults that listen to us, so I can say this. Sex is not an entitlement. Having a baby is not an entitlement. Yeah, you got the right to do it. The Apostle Paul says all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. Yeah. You and your girlfriend, you can have sex. You and your husband and wife, you can have sex, but you don't have the right to cancel the consequence if and when it happens. Really, let's face it. That whole act is meant to cultivate intimacy between a married couple, but it's also one of the things that God says in the garden is be fruitful and multiply.
Yep.
So one of the major characteristics is to have children. So I'm sorry that you decided to get intimate and you decided to hook up or whatever it was, and then this happens, but you don't have the right to go, well, the taxpayer's got to pay for this decision.
Yeah.
I can't expect the taxpayers to pay for a house for me to live in.
Yep.
I can't expect that. I can't expect the taxpayers to pay for a car for me to drive. I have to go out and I actually have to do something. But you see, when you've raised an entire generation to believe that there's no God and to believe that the government is going to handle everything for you, then it is a natural segue to go, well, if I get into something and I really don't want to deal with it, then the government the taxpayer has to pay to eradicate this decision that I made.
Right.
No one gets to do that. That's the whole reason why we've got this whole argument over student loans. And by the way, if you're somebody who believes that the government paying off your student loans is a way out, no, it is not. All they're going to do is tack it on to the national debt, and you're going to pay for it in your taxes. Mark my words.
Oh yeah. The look, it comes down to conviction. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can feel conviction before or after the procedure is done, and a good number of women have come out and said, "I regret having an abortion."
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: you don't believe that's happening because it's not said on Twitch or YouTube or CNN or the big name places. I would love to interview somebody who's willing to have a conversation about this, who had an abortion, and and see how it affected them, to see what happened afterwards, because the women I know that I've been around in college and in high school and now as an adult, I've met 3 women, and all 3 of them have said it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it because of how much pain and grief they've suffered afterwards. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, somebody else put that grief on them. No, nobody made the decision for them to do it. Okay, people informed them on what happened and where the baby was at a certain point in their, what a baby looks like at this trimester, all that type of stuff. I'm not really into the pregnancy
right.
lingo. But they were informed of those things. That grief came about because of a decision they made, and that conviction came about after they made that decision. And here's the thing. Here's a bold statement. The people who are out there and saying, I got an abortion and I'd do it again, you're not right in the head.
Well, it's a proven fact that even before you get into a trimester, if a mother sees or is able to, I can't think of what that procedure is where they
the ultrasound.
The ultrasound.
Yeah.
Once they have the ultrasound, once they see the heartbeat, or they see the baby moving, it's something like almost, it's not 100%, but it's close to 100%, high up in the 90s, that they will not carry through with that abortion.
Boy, I wish we had a doctor on here,
and
especially for
and there is and I can say this because I mean if on the Blaze, Glenn Beck, one of the things he does is he has a fund that you can contribute to. And what they do with that fund, I think they call it Beck Babies, I think is what it's called. But you can contribute to that, and they give the money. And this is a shout out. We're not endorsed, so this has nothing to do with an endorsement. I'm just saying it because I do think it's a good idea. You can give money to it, and what that money does is that money pays for the ultrasound.
Yeah.
And there are people that have given testimonies that once they've heard that ultrasound, they don't go through the abortion.
Yeah.
And so what that means is that there's a lot of, like Planned Parenthood, they discourage mothers from hearing that ultrasound.
They talk about Planned Parenthood does a whole bunch of things, but they advertise Planned Parenthood as the abortion clinic. When somebody says, oh, go down to Planned Parenthood's abortion clinic, they do a whole bunch of other things. Again, not into the pregnancy lingo, because I've never gone through that with a significant other, or my wife for that matter. So I don't know what they're called, but there are other procedures there's a whole bunch of things apparently that goes into a woman being pregnant, procedures and tests and whatnot. And Planned Parenthood, in tiny print, says, that it says that they have those other things, but we all know it as the abortion clinic. We all knew it growing up as, Planned Parenthood, that's where you get an abortion. That's just not fair to the uninformed, obviously, because when they see Planned Parenthood, they just see a get-out-of-jail-free card, because they ultimately see giving birth to a child as almost like a prison sentence. And I don't know, man. I think especially my generation was fed a whole bunch of pain and suffering too much. And it's not by our parents, because, yeah, sure, I've seen my parents, I've seen my mom have to raise my 3 brothers by herself, and that was a struggle for her, and I've seen that. But, man, my mom she still hunkered down and took care of business. She would wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning to go to work, and our grandparents would have to pick us up for school, and it was a struggle. But the thing is, I think a lot of young women don't hear this enough either, but you're not alone. There are people who are willing to help you. I know that for a fact. There are more people out there than you think who are willing to help you, and there are people who will tell you otherwise. They'll say, you're alone. You're no one's going to help you. And, I think that's what an abortion does. An abortion tells you that you can't. If you have a child, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. Whereas people, especially in the church, are going to say, no, we are going to help you so that you can.
Yeah.
So that you can do these things still. My best friend, who was my best man, his younger sister had a baby. And the first thing that ended up happening was everybody in that family, we came around and were like, hey, you know what? We got you. Whether it's for moral support, because I wasn't living in the state at the time, or if it was physically watching her baby for her so that she could still go to school, she was still given the you can. And that's what I think needs to be said more to these young women, especially, is that you can, even if you have a child.
Right.
Your child isn't going to end your career. Your child isn't going to end your dreams and aspiration. Heck, you might find out that having that child changes your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the encouragement is you need to know that you can, and it's possible, and that there are people out here who we just want to love on you and give you the support that you need. Because, look, if Roe v. Wade was upheld, I know for a fact that I'm not going to be running to the Capitol to try to burn it down. I'd say, okay, well, I still need to tell people that we're still here for them.
Absolutely. And a little bit of a change in course. I just got something here on the Senate GOP Senate gun control bill that I was talking about, and and it actually passed, and so it's on its way to.
Boy, segues are weird.
Yeah, and so one of the things, and I think this is one of the reasons why I absolutely believe that this will be taken up by the Supreme Court and overturned. And the 14, you can find a list of the 14. I don't have them in front of me, of the 14 Republicans who actually voted for this, and I can promise you this. I can promise you this: Lindsey Graham's one of them. Yep. Cornyn out of Texas is one of them. Mitch McConnell's one of them.
Yep, find that list, vote them out.
And of course, Cornyn's not running again. But one of the red flag laws that came up was it's incentivizes local disarmament proceedings, of which many states currently employ, secret ex parte hearings, calls only for standards equivalent only to civil court, for all the bluster in the measure about protecting due process and the constitutional rights of the subjects of the hearings during of the people. It implies that states will still be able to hold secret ex parte hearings to deprive the people of their rights. Entitles the subject to an attorney. Catch this. Entitles the subject to an attorney at the appropriate phase, but it must be at the subject's expense. Okay, so here's what's going on. Miranda rights. When you get arrested, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. And you first call you make before you talk to the police is to your an attorney.
Yeah, you should always say, I want my lawyer.
That right there is going to get it kicked out. I know it was signed, and here's why did I take this segue. You're going to be hearing a lot about this. This was signed to take the air out of the sails over Roe v. Wade. Because as soon as Roe v. Wade was announced, this bill went immediately to Congress, and it immediately was voted, and it immediately was carried right over to Joe Biden.
Oh, man, Nancy Pelosi didn't skip a beat when she was talking about, oh, well, the Republicans, they appointed these.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody said she was already on her third martini when she went up there. But she was saying, oh, the Republicans, when they appointed these judges in there, this was their plan. And then immediately, without skipping a beat, just said, and I'm very thankful that we have this gun control bill ready to go. Because, guys, the thing is, look, Roe v. Wade, cool. Like, I am really glad that went through. Just because I think the state should decide on it. Do I think abortion should be outlawed? Period. That's my conviction. I think abortion shouldn't be happening at all. But if it's at the state level, cool. The states can decide. You can vote if you want it or not.
Yeah.
But the big thing is that they tried to slide under the radar, especially on a Friday, slide under the radar that, oh, well, this gun control bill is going in. Because, guys, listen, anytime somebody says, especially the government, says anything about restrictions to you owning a gun, that's infringing on your Second Amendment right.
That's right.
Okay? To keep and bear arms, period. Boom. Right there. No infringement on that. Don't infringe on it. Don't step on it. Don't tread on me. Don't step on Snick. All that type of stuff.
Yep.
That is the problem. And Thomas is right. When I was a police officer, we didn't tell people, all right, hey, so whenever you want a lawyer, if you want a lawyer, we will determine at what phase we will allow your lawyer to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, whenever somebody said they wanted a lawyer, it was done right there. You're done talking.
That's right.
You're not talking to them. You can't even ask them if they want water, okay? That's how safe you have to be, because that is how our government works.
Yeah.
Sorry, not our government. That's how our Constitution works.
Yeah.
You do not get the right taken away from you for your gun, and you don't get the right of counsel taken away from you from anybody. And if that's the case, then yeah, this is something where you got to fight like heck.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to get kicked back because of that. And that's Thomas, do you know where you found that, or did somebody send it to you?
It was sent to me, but it come from Firearms Policy Coalition.
Okay.
So I mean, trusted source. But the thing is I heard Mike Lee talking about this, and he was one of the first ones that was on Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah.
And Wednesday or Thursday, and this was brought out, and it was on Wednesday because then by Friday it was passed, and it was passed in order to calm down the celebration of Roe v. Wade, or whatever you want to look at that as, but just based on that red flag law, and I think I don't see it in there, but I do believe that there's one thing there that. Even if you are a juvenile felon, which when you're a juvenile felon, all of that's supposed to be hidden, that can be brought up against you before you can buy a gun. And so the point being is, if you hear this, yes, get upset. Yes, call those senators. But I really do think it's going to be overturned by SCOTUS, because those red flag laws are unconstitutional. This is why that it is important that we get out and vote in November, because if these radical leftists take over, they're going to expand the court. They're going to give statehood to Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. They're going to do that. And when they do, then their dream of fundamentally transforming this country will be, in the words of the emperor, complete.
Oh, yeah.
And that is what we as Christians have to remain. When I started the podcast, I said this: we have to remain vigilant, and we have to remain awake, and we have to stay in prayer, because if you care about your country and you care about your children and their future, pray and vote.
Yep. Oh, and I'm going to take it a step further with those senators. This is all public knowledge. Senator Mitch McConnell, go ahead and vote him out. Senator Tom Tillis, go ahead and vote him out, North Carolina. Senator Susan Collins, Maine. Lindsey Graham, South Carolina. Bill Cassidy, Louisiana. Roy Blunt, Missouri. Richard Burr, North Carolina. Mitt Romney, Utah. Rob Portman, Ohio. Shelley Moore Capito, West Virginia. Joni Ernest, oh, that's a weird way to spell Ernest, Iowa. Lisa Murkowski, Alaska. Todd Young, Indiana. So those are your senators who voted against that and wanted to infringe on your rights. Republicans, if you're listening to this, yeah, and you live in those states, when the time comes, go ahead and vote them out, because that's pretty scumbag behavior to try to infringe on your rights, stand for the Constitution, and then totally spin on anything that you guys want to defend yourself with. So, I think it's been a great exchange today.
Absolutely.
I want you guys to know that R.I.P. Roe v. Wade, 1973 to 2022. And don't ever give up the fight. Just because you win one battle doesn't mean that there isn't an overarching war of just what is true and what is right.
Yeah.
And again, these are just our opinions. This is just what we think. If you have anything, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe. Share this entire podcast with your friends and family. We want to know what everybody thinks. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/exchange podcast, on YouTube. Guys, we really enjoy everything you guys do for us. We're very thankful for you guys watching. That is the biggest thing. We're thankful for all the support that we get, and we appreciate you guys being patient with us. Thomas?
Again, I want to say thanks for listening, and we missed being here last week. And yes, like, share, subscribe, get the word out, tell your friends. We enjoy making the product. We want you to enjoy listening. And until next week, God bless.